I'm Brad Clark of Private Press Brewing, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest is Cory King of Side Project, and he is here for a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, this message.
First Tee is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Some of the brightest brewers across the country have discovered the First Tee advantage. Hill Farmstead, Sweetwater Brewing Company, and Angry Chair are among the many who have used First Tea's unique and quality teas and botanicals to create top-rate beers. First Tee focuses on being direct, flexible, and fast. You can find out more about First Tea's collaboration with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting firstte.com/blog. That's FIRSDTEA.com/blog. Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, Malteurop Malting Company's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropmaltingco.com to learn how Malteurop Malting Company can support your malting needs. Contact Malteurop Malting Company at customersuccess@malteurop.com or dial 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order.
Okay, let's get into it.
Do it.
A bit about my guest today. Cory King's first love in the beverage industry was for wine, hence the passion and focus on oak-aged beers at Side Project. Originally seeking a career in winemaking, he found homebrewing and discovered that he could experiment with fermentation and interpretations of beer styles in his own kitchen. He and his wife, Karen, worked for other breweries first before Side Project was born, exploring oak in everything from saisons to wild ales, barley wines, and imperial stouts. After 10 years, Cory and Karen have grown Side Project into 3 locations and have expanded into producing lagers, IPAs, and other non-oak aged beers. Cory, it's so good to see you.
Brad, lovely to see you as well. I think we should just start this whole conversation about Brad's one of my best friends I've ever met. So this is going to be pretty off the cuff, binge and chatty, and I hope people don't mind listening to you and I just kind of bantering back and forth about. It's crazy to think that if we would have never found beer, we'd have never met. You know what I mean?
It's wild.
Yeah, in the good old days of traveling all the time and festivals and collaborations and which still happen, don't get me wrong, but not like at least for my life like they used to. So thank you for inviting me to sit here and chat with you, my friend. And that little intro feels like a whole other life. Talking about homebrewing. That was like a lifetime ago. And did you get your start that way too? Were you homebrewing or?
Yeah, I was really into beer, at a young age, and started picking up All About Beer and homebrewing magazines when I was 19 or 20. And then I started working at O'Hooley's when I turned 21, which was the brew pub that then became Jackie O's. And the guy that was the brewer there at the time had opened up a homebrew shop in Athens, Ohio. And I started homebrewing right when I turned 21. And then like 18 months later, I did my first all grain as the head brewer at the brew pub on the 7-barrel system. So I only did like 30 batches of beer extract before I went pro. But, it kind of like became part of my lifestyle.
Yep.
It became this way that I relaxed and had fun, and it was way more interesting than college. And once I graduated, I was like, I want to make beer for the rest of my life if I can. So let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
And 18 years later, here I am now. talking with
Yeah.
one of my best friends. And I can't speak enough about how good the brewing industry has been to me. And,
Yeah.
finding people like you or finding my partner Adair,
Yeah.
it's still this amazing industry that we're part of. And it's great to still be contributing to it and interacting with it.
Yeah.
Um, and
Agreed. Yeah.
and
The
I get to
the
catch up with
peripherals.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we catch up fairly often.
Yeah.
This is maybe the first time it's been recorded. At least we knew it was being recorded, you know?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, the peripherals of the industry were value adds that, yeah, when we were all getting into it, we never knew would become what they are. Like when we were all starting to make beer, like we didn't know kind of what it would grow into, and there's relationships. And I feel like there was a couple of years where we all felt like well, at least I almost felt like we were on tour. Do you know what I mean? Like we'd all catch up with each other. Like, I'll see you in Copenhagen. Hey, I'll see you over in California in 2 months. Hey, we be in New York? Like we're like we're traveling to these same massive festivals around the world, even. And then in between, we'd like, let's do a collab. Why don't you fly it in? And so it was like we all saw each other out and about all the times, and then sometimes at our homes, and forge these friendships in the early part. Early for me part of this industry. And I think and when there was that massive wave taking off, and it was just crazy how fast everything was going. And because of that, met people like you. And I think you and I have done more collabs together than I've done with anybody else.
Uh,
um
Definitely
and
within my canon, I've hands down done the most with you,
yeah.
and just the widest like breadth of beer styles as well. We started off doing primarily mixed fermentation collabs.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Uh-huh.
think what was it called, like
Pitter
Ami?
patter. Oh,
Well,
Ami Port du Jour. Yeah,
yeah,
Ami Port
Ami
du Jour.
maybe it came out before Pitter Patter.
It
It's
might
hard
have come
to
out. It come out first because it was more saison based, but we
brewed.
did pitter patter. We brewed pitter patter. That was our first collab we did in our new facility. Was with
Oh,
you. Remember,
wow.
we filled. I have to show you the pictures. Remember, it was like the very first 5 puncheons up against the
Yep.
wall, and now that wall is full. But
Yep.
we filled the very first puncheons on that wall of my pyramid stack as we built it. And so you and I did the very first collab there at our new facility, and we did the pitter patter, making fun of my wife's little pitter patter feet when we
Yep.
walk. So when
Yep.
Brad and I walk, we're a lot taller than my wife, and so she has to pretty much jog behind us accidentally. We don't mean to. I don't mean to make my wife jog when we walk, but when we're walking around like Copenhagen is what it was, and we just on our mission, our strides are a lot longer than hers, and I love my wife very much, and her and I's love is shared by making fun of each other, and so I make fun of her pitter patter steps. So, which
I was
became
like, that sounds like a great beer name, and that was my first and only pluot beer
mm-hmm.
that I've ever done.
Yeah,
And yeah, and then we did like the Ami Jour, or
Ami Port du Jour. Yeah,
yes,
Ami Port du Jour.
which was almost more of like a beer to guard.
Yeah,
I think I talked you into putting some like C65 in there or
yeah,
something, so it had an orangish hue to it.
yep. We changed up the malt bill a little bit on that one, and man, that's been good lord, buddy. We brewed that. That's a long time ago. That's pre-COVID. That's the other part of my brain that I sometimes don't remember. I should have refreshed my
Yeah,
senses on some of these collabs.
I thought about doing like a chronological thing before this,
Oh
but that seemed
yeah,
like a lot of work. But and then there was the We Are You with our good
yep,
friends Sante Darius and Tired Hands, and we did
yep.
4 iterations of that, and
Mm-hmm.
that was always a good time. Everybody getting together and like sharing our cultures, and that felt like
Beautiful beer. Yep.
pretty like pivotal collab when everybody was just kind of slapping names on things, and
Yep.
like the collaboration had become kind of what it is today for a lot of things, more like performative, if you will. And I
Yep.
think we've always focused on trying to keep some meat on our like collab, like make it mean something, or share something, or allow each other's processes or ingredients to reflect and also then, you know, permeate throughout our breweries as well, our respective brewing operations. And that's where we get into like a lot of big beers. Few stouts, but primarily barley wine and some wheat wine, and then
maple wheat wine,
yeah,
and honey wheat wine,
honey barley wine,
honey barley wine. Sorry, honey barley wine.
And then you recently came to my space. Well, it was 8 months ago, and you blended a stout barley wine blend from my barrel stock,
which was awesome. That was fun.
Awesome
as in thank you for giving me that opportunity to dig into all of your barrels and say, I want these. Can we do these, please?
Yeah. It's kind of wild. They all ended up being on the same barrel rack. And there was only 4 barrels on that rack.
Yep.
The 3 you picked were all right there. We tried a few others, but ultimately it was like we stood in front of it and then it just leapt out at us.
Yeah, all the double barrel stuff, which, you know, I think you and I both recently in the last couple of years really started to focus on stout barley wine blends a little bit more, like kind of blending these two components together, and they become flavors which we can't almost write into one single recipe, where they need to age separately, and a lot of that comes down to the blending. You know, you write it into one recipe, that's all you've got. Where if we blend it, we can be like, I want 37% this or 43% this. You know, you can really dial in that last expression, which is kind of been fun to. Back in the day, these would be called strong ales, which is like the worst term ever and so generic. And now we're making strong ales again, but we're giving them the more of I think a nomenclature that people better understand, and they're going over very well. At least for me too, as a drinker, they have more heft than the barley wine, but they're not as exhausting as an imperial stout can be sometimes. And then they have this complexity that's always intriguing. And I don't know, maybe if the strong ales of the past didn't have that. I mean, all of our beers, yours, mine, are all bigger than the old world strong ales that we all first tasted. But strong ales used to be like this weird basket that things fell into, where we're honestly intentionally putting things into it. I feel like. And with that intention has come some pretty cool beers and new blends that we've got to play around with, which, you know, thanks for letting me. I pulled, you know, only double barrel aged beer from Brad when we were there. I'm like, I'm sorry, Brad, can I steal these ones that have the extra work and labor and love and barrel and time in them and put them in our blend?
I mean, that's, you know, you were the second person I invited in to do that. The first being Kyle from Horace. And I think hopefully Brindleson is able to make it out here in the next 8 months or so to do the same. But that's kind of like what I want to do. Like, there might be a couple barrels that are off limits, but whatever makes the best beer, whatever your palate takes it, that's what should go in. And having I guess there's some confidence in my part saying, like, you can take whatever you want and I can still make, you know, what I intend to make later in the year without those barrels. But I mean, you pulled a triple barrel, but that's the first barrel that I showed you, because it was one of the best barrels in the
you're like, you should taste this one. I'm like, can I have that one?
Yes, I knew what I was getting into. And then you picked a double barrel barley wine, and then you actually picked like one of my older single barrel stouts, which was about 22 or maybe 26 months old. But you picked some killer barrels, and everybody loved. All of my members loved that beer.
It's fun.
And so your blends, your stout barley wine blends, that's the continuance label, correct?
So the continuance label for us is an all-encompassing blended beer that's not funky, is the thing. So we have Pulling Nails, which are blended funky blended funky line, and then continuance is this encompassing blended not funky line. Now, obviously, we blend all of our stouts, we blend all of our barley wines, but I was getting to the point where we were doing more of these barley wine stout blends, and, you know, naming a beer is hard, and that's not my forte. And so some people would just like keep naming these beers, have brand new names every time, because they're all different blends. And I don't ever want to pigeonhole myself and have to do the same blend over and over and over again. The only time we do that's for Beer Barrel Time. And that has a lot of love in it. And I love doing that one because it's like this one time of the year we have to focus on making this one beer. And everything else we've ever done is always these other blends where it's like, let's just be creative and have fun and do something different. So continuance is that encompassing. So some of the continuances didn't have stout in them. Like the very first one was stout barley wine blend, and the second one was just barley wines. But we adjuncted the barley wine, and instead of creating this new, like, I don't know if we're gonna ever adjunct the barley wine again. I don't know if I want to have a name for this beer that may not come back. And so we just play around. So continuance, yeah, it is more often than not where you will find our stout barley wine blends, unless it's a particular beer for, say, like when we did for Gabe at Anchorage's 10th anniversary. That was actually the first stout barley wine blend that we had done, intentionally, because when I was at Anchorage not long before that, brewing with Gabe, he had his stout barley wine blend lagering in one of his fooders, getting ready to clear up so he could package it. And the first sip I had, I was like, what is this? I don't think I've had this before at that level of intensity. We've all had stout barley wine blends in the strong ale category like back in the day, but not with our new world richness and viscosity and impactfulness. And so when I had it for the first time, I was like, what in the world? And the more I sit there and sipped on it, because it was great, because he had it lagering, it was chilled, and we're just pulling samples off the foeder, and I kept having more and more of those. Like, you've got something going here, my friend, that is familiar, because we've had stout barley wine blends in the past, but not like this. And it became exciting. And so that's where, like, when we did for Gabe, that was the first time I dove into that side of a blend. And yeah, so we're doing a lot more of those now, because I personally feel like they work, and I feel like you and I have great multi palates, and if you and I like them, then maybe other people like them too. I don't, like, always, how flavor is so subjective. I'm gonna like things that you don't like, and you like things I don't like. But if you and I like them, then we're probably on the better side of more people liking them not. It's a flavor that more people will find inviting than not inviting. So that's always been fun to kind of push these boundaries and educate our palates still on, like, what we can do. We just did another blend recently here for our 10th anniversary that we actually incorporated some of our first bourbon barrel quad into, because I love quads. Not the most popular style for the American consumer. I love quads. Rocher 10, one of my favorite beers ever made, ever. It's funny because it's bone dry comparatively than to what we make, but I love the purpose of a quad, and so we did a quad in our aspect, which is massive and has a high finishing gravity comparatively, but has all that fruitiness of a quad and richness of sugar, and with blended into, we actually blended in. We have a wine license now, so actual port, so port wine. I'm not a big fan of Missouri. Oh, I shouldn't say that out loud. I'm not a big fan of Missouri wines. We don't have you're in California, we're in Missouri. I mean, come on. Like,
I know.
our wines.
Not fair.
Okay.
I wasn't a big fan of Ohio wines either, Cory.
Okay. So, and we have some lovely people here making, good stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's just, our weather's not great. Our grapes aren't the best, but I will say that Missouri port will hold its own against some of the best ports in the world, and I will hands down. There's something about the hardiness and richness and craziness of some of our grapes, how well they can do with port, and so we actually have some port wine from Noble Ice. They did all the hard work. Don't get me wrong. We've been just aging it for about 4 years now. It's from a harvest 5 years ago, and we actually blended some of that into our most recent kind of, like, if you will, big multi blend. That was really cool and kind of a different push, because a lot of breweries legally can't even do that. So it's like a kind of a fun, like, boundary push that we can make that some people can't even do, and to show that these flavors really intertwine in more aspects than just what you think of when you think of beer. And there's surprising a lot of people like, I've always, it kind of melds in. It's a fruitiness I thought was the barley wine, or like, I can't even really tell that the port's in there. And it's like, yeah, I know, because it's, when we're making these big sticky fruity bombs sometimes, and I say on the barley wine side or the quad side, like, it kind of works right in there really, really well. So it's still fun to, like, push the boundaries on these blends, that, like, you're even doing. I'm very jealous of your system where it's like, I'm just going to focus on big multi beer in these blends, and that's my primary focus, because those are the things I still geek out on for our brewery. And I still geek out on the sours, don't get me wrong. Um, but these big multi blends have kind of been a new thing for me the last couple of years. It's funny because we've been making big multi beers for a long time, but these new blends, but these new blends are getting a little more, I don't know, intriguing. I don't know. They've been maybe because the challenge is there again. There's a little bit more of a challenge to them, where we have to really sit down and dig into them to really hone these things in, because you can go the wrong way too, and they could be not good.
Yeah. I think for a while, we were getting so caught up in uh like the ingredients or what we could add to our stout to create a new thing to get people to buy more, stout bottles.
hmm
Um, and so we were going through all the adjuncts and different vanillas and different nuts or different origin cinnamon, or be it marshmallow things, or it just all these different things, right? Not so much talking about us, but just the broader uh, beer
Yeah,
spectrum.
yeah.
And for me personally, starting private press and like focusing on blending and focusing on making multiple stout recipes, just like you do, just like I used to do, and barley wine recipes, but then putting them in a bunch of different barrels and then stripping away those kind of rigid guardrails and being able to do whatever you want. I'm realizing that there's a lot more that can be discovered with just beer and barrel. And these blends of barley wine or stout or porter or quad or Munich wine, seeing how we can make something different and new. But that's also familiar. Our customer base knows malt. They
Yeah.
know alcohol. They know chocolate, caramel. They know all these things. So as long as that's all there is like a connective tissue, then we can continue to push everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, so you were playing around with port. There's obviously double barreling. We're both starting the triple barrel more than we probably have. I've got a few right now. You probably have a
Yep.
dozen plus.
We got quite a few now.
Uh,
We just in one of our blends for our anniversary, we just released a part of it was a quintuple barrel aged stout.
mm-hmm.
Um, it
You, Dave, just pushing it.
Well, it started out as two oak barrels, and by the time we were done, it was 5 year project. By the time I was done, it had been two full oak barrels, so 106 gallons, had concentrated down to about 33 gallons of beer. So, um, is it fruitful? No. Um, is it interesting? Yes. Like, we're creating flavors that are still, and are they tasty? Yes. If they weren't tasty, we wouldn't do it again, because it's not a it's not a matter of just putting quintuple on the label and seeing what happens. And it became a small portion of a blend. It wasn't even used the whole thing because it was so intense, and different. But yeah, but that, and then I'll be honest, like another thing for me that lately has been exciting is just the different or the exotic oaks. We did a Mitsunara finished derivation, so a Japanese oak, super rare barrel. I actually haven't had a chance to find more barrels after the two I got. And I fortunately I got the first two from Willett, from Drew down at Willett. He finished a whiskey in these Mitsunara barrels, and it's like this beautiful, like sandalwoody note that is actually appetizing. You don't think like, oh, I'm going to eat sandalwood, but it came across as like a sandalwoody note that was super delicate and lovely. And that was one of my most favorite beers we made in a while. And because we spent so many years doing adjuncts, and we're still doing adjuncts, and adjuncts are great, but we use only, natural ingredients like yourself. And there's a limit to those. Like, there's only so many actual tangible natural ingredients that are tasty in a beer. And you play with those for a while and different combinations for a while. And then you start geeking out on things that other breweries have never done, which is like, let's get these meats in our barrels. We right now have a bunch of Ambarana cats, so a Brazilian oak, that have this like beautiful cinnamon note to them, and
Yeah,
it's
those barrels are nuts. Yeah.
they're nuts, and they're so cool because like I love cinnamon. Anybody that's probably listening to this No Side Project knows that I put cinnamon in quite a few barrels or beers, stouts, intentionally, because I like cinnamon, and it balances our sweetness really well with our bigger beer. So to have this like elevated level of cinnamon, and I mean, like, it doesn't taste like cheap grocery store cinnamon. It tastes like it's just a cinnamon component that's actually beautiful. My hands still smell like it. We were working on the barrels today, and I cannot get it off my hands. And so those have been really exciting lately. Where it's, you're getting special woods from special places on this earth, and coopered by people, and this is the product they make, and then all we have to do is put beer in it, and then it's absorbing like the flavor of that region, which is really cool and different than
Yeah.
Yours more vanilla, and which I love doing and tastes it's very tasty. But um, yeah, it's been kind of a full circle. You know, everything goes kind of full circle, and it's like brand new barrel aging for me, even though we've been barrel aging for a long time.
Totally, yeah. That's exactly how I feel. I'm doing a couple adjuncted releases, but primarily, I'm just geeking out
Finishes.
on getting different types of barrels, putting different types of beer in them, and having all these different ages.
Hmm.
Double barreling is still like that always works.
Hmm.
Different combinations of that, going from wheat to rye, or I've been doing a lot of rye to rye to try to get more of that
Hmm.
baking spice because I love baking spice, like barrel
Hmm.
baking spice in my beers. Um, Going back to the triple barreling, like what are you finding with those? Because I'm finding it to be kind of difficult to get
Yeah.
stuff that tastes good on its own. I find that
Yeah.
triple barrel aged barley wine is a lot more easy to work with than triple barrel aged stout. And I don't know
Yeah.
if that's
So
the oxidation process or maybe it's the series of barrels that I've played with, but there's an intensity and almost like one of them almost tasted like black olives a little bit.
yeah.
Um, and it was really intense, and I found a home for it, and it worked beautifully with all the other components. But it was like this is
A
different.
lot.
Yeah, this is a lot. Yeah,
So our let's see here. The two of our bigger known triple barrel releases, we did MJK, which is barley wine, and so that just worked really well. Like that beer without that alcohol of the triple. So it, I guess for anybody listening, like Brad and I, like whenever, at least depending on your climate where you're located, every time I add move a beer to another barrel, we pick up an ABV point or two. Um, and then we get concentration evaporation. Our humidity and stuff here, like we actually increase in ABV. Some people actually lose ABV. Some people just stay the same. So our gravity goes up because we're evaporating water. Our ABV goes up. So for MJK per se, pretty sweet beer going into oak, and it needs like the three barrels to really kind of pull it down. And what happened is it actually becomes like about 20% after we triple barrel age it. So, um, much like your, you know, big utopias and stuff, you know, a lot of that ABV is coming from the barrel after barrel after barrel. Fermentation is really hard to get to go that high. And so for MJK and a barley wine, it works really, really, really well. And weirdly enough, you know, oxidation in barley wine usually is the positive thing to a level, and the flavors produced plus the barreling and the ABV really just pulled this beer together and produced a beautiful beer. Now on the other side of that, our triple barrel stout that we released was actually a collab with Gabe at Anchorage, called Forever Darkness, and we did a different approach where it was triple barrel, but it was 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. And if you know anything about side project, we don't 12 months, we don't pull anything at 12 months. Everything's like at least 18 months plus. So it almost like never hit full maturity at any stage in every barrel. And but every time we moved it, we got alcohol and then alcohol and alcohol. And most of our recipes, stout recipes, the barrel is that last component that you need, that roast, that bitterness that really makes an imperial stout out of it. And by doing it three times, this one worked, but it was intense. And it is, and it's only 19%, and it drinks like it's 30, you know, compared to the barley wine, it's at 20. And it's just so roasty and barrel forward, just barrel forward. Um, that I enjoy it, but it has its I'm glad it was a 375 bottle, you know, and there's some of our whiskey loving, you know, members as we are 10 years old now, a lot of our first lovers of beer, first lovers of side project are now, you know, a little bit older, and they're getting into whiskey as well and stuff like that. So the ones that really dig the whiskey are really digging these big barrel forward beers. But on the other side of that, they're not maybe as balanced as just a double barrel stout. And we are pushing it again with some of our, like I said, we had a quintuple barrel aged stout. It was so intense, it was barely part of the blend. But I am trying to figure out maybe a better way to do a triple barrel stout that, you know, whether it's bigger and a little sweeter and letting the barrel intensity kind of pull it back on the palate a little bit, even though the ABV is going to go up.
yeah.
Um, that extra barrel really changes a lot. Double barreling, I feel like we could knock out of the park like that. Just go again. We got this one, but once we had that last barrel, it's been a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at least for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. I feel like um, we talk about like windows opening and closing, right? And double barreling has a pretty big window. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes just a short double barrel soak, I'm talking 3 to 6 months, and it's tasting great. It's
Yeah.
got all the character. Or you can go another 18 months in it, and it's still usually tasting great. So there's this huge area where you can utilize that barrel. But I found with the triple barrels, it's tough because either they're too hot, so you have to wait longer. But I feel like the opening's so much smaller before it gets too intense or too oxidized, or but I've only played around with a handful of them here, so I'm still trying to figure it out a little bit. And like one of them, I did like port to bourbon to apple brandy,
Yeah.
and maybe that was a little too much, but I found a home for it. But I mean, are you primarily going bourbon to bourbon to bourbon?
Yeah.
Or
So far, they've been bourbon to bourbon to bourbon. We're definitely going to start playing around with doing double barrel, like you said, like the double barrel
yeah,
window's bigger and they're softer coming out, and then finishing for the third barrel in maybe a port or
yes,
maybe
yeah,
a Laird's apple brandy, or whatever, maybe that last barrel being a softer finishing barrel as opposed to another vessel to age in to maturity, because you can't really just throw it in a bourbon barrel, fresh bourbon barrel, and finish it in a bourbon barrel. It really needs to go through full maturity again, because it's just whenever we put beer in a bourbon barrel, it just tastes like somebody put a bottle of bourbon in your beer like that. It needs to really round out and soften up and finish again, which is a full blown re-aging for the most part, at least for our beers and our climate here, in our barrel climate, our barrel room climate and stuff. It just tastes disjointed for such a long time. So I want to do some more double barrel and triple barrel technically by in a finishing barrel, where it can be like a shorter contact. I'm in a softer barrel, like even if it's just French oak or port or red wine. Do these just do these rounded, softer finishes, which you haven't done yet. But we have a
yeah,
lot of double barrel stuff going on, and a lot of times, honestly, what happens is we'll order 40 bourbon barrels and we fill 36 because the batch was a little short. We have 4 extra ones. Like, let's go pick some barrels and do a double barrel, and then next thing you know, we have a bunch of double barrel. And then we come back around like, those are actually mature, but we don't need double barrel beer right now. Let's do triple barrel. And so we do that. And so it's been fun to be able to kind of treat our bourbon barrel warehouse like a rick house. We just brew a bunch of stock and then we pick from it as needed. And so that's given us the flexibility to do some of these things that they don't have a direct goal yet. It's let's
yeah.
see what they age out to be and become. Just like you, and that's the joy of a blendery, as the way we blend these things.
Yes. Something I did recently was I took 5 bourbon barrels that had this walnut stout base in it, but they were in different types of barrels. I blended all those together and then filled up 5 rye barrels.
Mhm.
Rye barrels. So that blend went all together, and then that's now aging across 5 different rye barrels, and it's been about 8 months right now, and I'm tasting those and trying to figure out if they all work together, if I need to pull something else that's not that base stock, but taking that that finishing barrel nod from the bourbon industry and seeing how I can push that. Or if I'm putting together a blend and I only need 5 barrels, I might blend 6 or 7 barrels into it to get the complexity. But then I've got 100 extra gallons. So then I'm taking that double barrel blend and rebarreling barrels. And then those can be their own thing, or they can, be the anchor for the next double barrel blend. But that's essentially a triple barrel.
Yep.
But it's like the semantics and just how you're massaging these blends out. I find it really fun that here we are, decade plus into barrel aging blending, and we're still like figuring some things out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been cool to treat these more like spirits at that point, like you're saying. We're moving them in, then moving back out. Like, let's just let these keep aging, because they are rather robust beers that as long as you're treating them well, you're not beating the crap out of them, and moving them back into cask can create some new flavor. So you were mentioning, do you often adjunct and then re-age afterwards, or like you're saying the walnut one, or is that just like every now and then, like, let's try something different?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple beers where I will use the adjunct actually on the hot side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like maple and honey, I use those on the hot side, but those are different adjuncts.
Yeah,
Those are sugar sources, not
yeah, yeah.
but with some of my nut beers, I will use it on the hot side, and then I'll add more at the packaging tank to kind of pull that forward. But you can still taste it even from the hot side, even 2 years in after a blend into another barrel and then the finishing barrel. It's still kind of there. So I kind of like having that like note from the beginning and then being able to add more to take it over the finishing line. The only hook on that is then I have this base stock that has nuts in it, and there's people that have nut allergies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it limits you a little bit, which sometimes helps flush out a whole new idea. But I can't use that beer in another blend
Yeah.
without saying, "Hey, this has walnuts in it, or
Yeah. Yeah.
almonds, or whatever," because
Yeah.
I don't want anybody having to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's very important.
That's very, very important.
Yeah.
And it's fun with these blends, like trying to keep track sometimes of everything that is in all of them. And, like, hey, this one may contain lactose because it might have had one of the barrels that might have had lactose in it.
Yeah.
So we just put that on all of our labels now. And fortunately, and not unfortunately, fortunately, I'm not a pro or anti lactose a person, but yeah, keeping track of those is great. And so now we just put it may contain lactose on all of them, just to make sure I don't want to ever hurt anybody's belly, or offend anybody, or offend anybody that is vegan. So yeah, because our blends, and then you're like, because we're moving barrels around so much, and don't get me wrong, I could dig down and figure it out, but I would never, I would hate to. Oh my God, we did put one barrel of that in there, and we forgot to put it on the label. Forgot to put that there.
Yeah.
So we just
Yeah.
it would be more of a of that. But yeah, I completely those. We've only done adjuncts. We've done adjuncts like a couple times where those are actually still maturing. We did one recently actually where we did anchos, vanilla beans, and cocoa nibs, and our expression just we got more leather than this like little pop of spice from the anchos, and the barrel, by the time we got everything kind of dialed in, the barrel was so subdued, so we just went ahead and took the beer and put it back in barrel. And so we're going to see what this does. So adjuncted into barrel, and then when it comes back out, we'll see if we need to adjunct it again or not, or play around with it. And that's where like the whole science of brewing goes out the window. We're become more like bakers. Not, I guess not really bakers. You're more cooks, chefs at that point. We're a little salt here, a little pepper there. It's fine. Oh, yeah, I have a hard time saying that about myself, but
me too. That was a hard one to get out.
Yeah,
Before we go any further, we're gonna pause for some sponsor support.
Yeah. Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, Malteurop Malting Company's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropemaltingco.com to learn how Malt Europe Malting Company can support your malting needs. Contact Malt Europe Malting Company at customersuccess@malteurope.com or dial 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. First Tea is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Some of the brightest brewers across the country have discovered the First Tea advantage. Hill Farmstead, Sweetwater Brewing Company, and Angry Chair are among the many who have used First Tea's unique and quality teas and botanicals to create top-rate beers. First Tea focuses on being direct, flexible, and fast. You can find out more about First Tea's collaboration with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting firsttea.com/blog. That's FIRSD tea.com/blog.
All About Beer is back, and we're asking for your support to help provide the independent beer media this rich and colorful industry deserves. Visit our website, allaboutbeer.com, where we're frequently posting new content. And please consider throwing us a few bucks at patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We have low-cost memberships for individuals and small and large companies alike. Every dollar goes to help produce new articles and podcasts.
All right, Cory. So you just celebrated 10 years at Side Project. You just wrapped up all the celebrations on like Sunday, right?
Yeah, Monday actually.
Oh, Monday.
Yeah. We go ahead. Sorry.
Are you feeling rested yet?
No, I'm not. I am 40 now. I'm not 30 like I was when we started this whole thing. But no, it was the most incredible weekend. It really was. Overwhelming support and love from around the world that showed up here in St. Louis. Um, it was humbling. We did not expect that kind of turnout. Post COVID, we have done some bigger releases. I say bigger releases, like we did Van Winkle BBT, stuff like that we actually marketed in, and the turnout was soft. Because of people's habits, traveling, beer habits, whatever may have been during COVID, it had changed, and which is great. I'm different too than I learned to live at home and have a lot more fun at the house, and so and we all gotten a little bit older. Well, we weren't expecting this kind of turnout for our 10th anniversary, and we thought things were going to be softer, and it was like, I don't know, it was like 2017 around here. There was people everywhere, and it was lovely, and I do believe we made a lot of people happy, and we were prepared, but it was still a lot, and I hope they had a good time. Everybody seemed to really enjoy it. We released 5 of our own new beer. We've never released so many beers at one time. We released 5 new beers, and then Gabe from Anchorage made a beer for us called For Cory, which is lovely. And because, like I said, I made a beer for him called For Gabe back for his 10th.
Of course. Yeah, that was cool. That was an easy name to come up with on Gabe.
Yeah, I just told Gabe I'm happy you spelled my name right. There's no E in it, so it's just CORY. Good job, Gabe. Thanks. So, a beer that I made for my son Milo called MJK's a triple barrel aged barley wine. It was inspired by Triple Oak Deal with the Devil way back when, and he put some Triple Oak Deal with the Devil in his blend and everything. So it was really cool. But we had people in from all over Europe, from all over East Asia, from Brazil. I mean, it was so cool to see so many people, and they all flew in like Thursday, and most of them didn't leave till Tuesday. So we were expecting the releases to be, slower on Sunday, Monday, as you would, and it was the same people because they were here. Like, I'm here the whole weekend. Like, okay, this is awesome. So we got our butts handed to us for all better terms, but I think we did a good job. We had something to do at all 3 locations. So if you've never visited Side Project, we have 3 locations, all within a block of each other here in Maplewood, just as pretty much St. Louis. And it was cool to have that many beers released. We released our anniversary box set beers individually, and then we did a 10th anniversary barley wine, which our 10th anniversary barley wine is pretty much double barrel MJK, which MJK is always triple barrel, but it's the MJK recipe double barrel aged, and then a small back blend of one of my favorite beers we make called Lengths. And so it was a blend I really sat down and dug into. And honestly, I think that was the winner of the weekend amongst the consumers, which is cool because it was obviously it was also the biggest batch we had. 10. Sometimes people love the smallest batch, and then this one they were like, "Man, I just want more of that 10th anniversary barley wine."
Yeah, and
I guess I still got it. I guess in my blending.
Right?
Yeah, and Lengths is it's Adam beer inspired. Yeah, it's an Adam beer inspired by Alan's from Hair of Dogs take on an Adam beer. Yeah. So if you've ever had an actual traditional Adam beer, these are all interpretations of that style, and I think improvements that work well for barrels versions of Adam beers, much bigger versions. But yeah, so
Adam beer is like esoteric. I think it's originated in the Dortmunder region.
Yeah,
I actually did one with Blake, who interviewed me, last episode. We did one years ago, and it had some smoke character to it. Yeah. I don't know if does Lengths have smoked malt in it?
It has a tiny bit of smoked malt in it. And the original Adam beers were actually not even that dark. They're more like a honey golden, dark honey maybe. And I don't know what color yours was, but mine's inspired by Alan's Adam, and it looks like a barley wine. In the traditional
barley wine looks like a brown
A
porter.
stout. Yeah.
Brown porter. Sorry, a stout.
Oh, this stout. I don't believe in brown porters. To me, I've never made a porter that wasn't black. But that's no, that's the style. Don't get me wrong. Sorry, not that I don't believe him. I always just give Witter a tough time about that. Witter and I always argue about porters, and he's like, "Look up the definition." I'm like, "Definition's stuck. Have you had a side project beer? None of them follow definition. They are just beer. You know,
Yeah,
we have guidelines to our beer. So
yeah, that
but
sounds
yeah,
like a good Witter argument.
absolutely. So, yeah, anyways, yeah, thank you. We just had our 10th anniversary. It was awesome. 5 new side project beers, and then the 440. So the side project beers are cool because we did a double rye version of BBT. So we have a rye version of BBT, and it's amazing how just the barrel is such an important part of our beer. And so when we have a we have beer barrel time, which is usually bourbon, and then we have a rye version. Just that slight change, that last ingredient, it kind of shows the importance of how the barrel really selection is. And then we had a double barrel aged derivation. So our double barrel, our stock, our imperial stout stock that can become either beer barrel time or derivation or a continuous blend. And we finished it on it's double willet age and then finished on vanilla beans. We had continuance 10-year, which continuance 10-year is technically double barrel aged MJK as well, but it was apple brandy finished. So Laird's apple brandy finish, which is a whole new take on that beer. We didn't call it MJK once again because MJK is always triple barrel aged. And then we had Deca. It's a DECA hyphen. So Deca is a precursor, a prefix for me 10 in a lot of work.
I think Founders put out Deca first, but that might have had
did they really?
Yeah.
Did they really? Damn, I didn't even look.
It had like 10 malts and 10 hops and 10 spices and was aged for 10 months or something. It was 10%. Something like that.
Yeah. No. Oh God, I didn't think about that.
I remember loving that beer a long time ago. Founders
10 years ago,
20 plus years old now.
Exactly.
So you mentioned that it felt like 2017, and we all get a little spark in our eyes when we think about 15 and 16 and 17, where it was just we were all having fun, we were exploring and experimenting, and everything was selling, and everybody, consumers and brewers, we were just excited. So as you celebrated 10 years, what does the next 10 years, what are you looking for in that? And like, what are you and Karen looking to do with the company, with the staff, with the stability, with, what are you talking about?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think if any one of us knew, we would all be telling our friends, like, this is what we all should be doing for the next 10 years. Because as quickly as this thing turned on, if you will, this craft beer wave, it's also like stagnated a little bit for a lot of our friends in breweries. Like, I think you and I are fortunate. We've been very small and we never lost. We never turned this into a company really where I couldn't touch the beer and be part of that. So I've always really enjoyed what we do and never had to sell anything because we've never been large enough to tell people we had to buy our stuff. But with that being said, the next 10 years from now are even more different. All of our consumers are, none of us have drawn in really newer consumers, and I can't say none of us because the breweries that are doing things that are the newer consumers are diving into are just beer styles that I don't find enjoyable for myself. If there's nothing right or wrong about that. We started Side Project making beer that we wanted to drink, and we still do that. And I think the whole industry has seen just like a different change of drinking habits. I was in a meeting the other day, and there was somebody that was 24 in our meeting, and after we were talking, I was just like, man, at the gym, like, he's 24, and I was like, there's a lot of kids at our gym that's like your age. I remember I was your age. I didn't go to the gym that much. I was just like, I was 24 and healthy, and like, I mean, I worked out, but I wasn't a slob. But and he goes, yeah, like in our generation, like, there's pictures posted of us online all the time. We live in an Instagram world, so they all are a little more health conscious. And he's like, I want to look good. Like, imagine like how many times when we were 24, you have to worry about getting posted online? Like none. And he goes, yeah, you see yourself posted online, your gut hanging out, and you're like, I want to not look like that online. Like, whoa, it doesn't sound fickle. It just sounds different. They live in a different, and in a different world than we grew up in. And so I say we grew up, I'm kind of my old or what, but there's definitely some changes. And so we're just going to keep doing what excites us. And seriously, what excites me is I still get excited about doing these big blends. I get excited about our quality. I get excited about our consistency of quality. I get excited about what our staff likes to do. And we're going to look forward to doing another location that has food and beverage together, a place I can take my kids. A lot of our customers now have children and families, and they're more apt to drink at a place that has a snack, and have two beers than go sit at side project for a derivation keg release.
Yeah, totally.
It's no, and we still, don't get me wrong, and that's our local crowd. Like we just had our anniversary, and it surprised me from all these people around the world that come in and treat us like I treat Canton and Drie in Belgium. Like they came in to drink our stouts here in St. Louis, where I would go drink lambic in Brussels, or I would go to Champagne and drink champagne, or Burgundy and drink wine. They came to St. Louis to drink stout, and that's not lost on us at all. I am going to continue to do that. But what's next for us? And as we kind of plateaued in production about 4 years ago, 5 years, and that's only because of our choice. We have no more space. I mean, Brad's been there. We can only make so much barrel aged beer. I don't want to make more beer because that would be tougher for me to keep control of a lot of the beers if we get too big. But how do you keep growing your business as we don't lose staff. We have no turnover. Our staff's really, really great, and they stay with us, and we want to continue to take care of them and pay them well and give them raises and 401ks and health insurance and all those things that now I have to talk about that is more business related than say just brewing related. And so going forward, we just want to grow the business organically, local, and still always have that global crowd that appreciates our niche, um, flavor profile of barrel aged stouts and barley wines. And so I think the idea is to have another location that has food and drink, and maybe a small brew house where I can get back in the brew house more often and just kind of have fun and make something that's, like I said, our global crowd isn't looking for me to make a traditional triple. I would love to drink a traditional triple that I made, and that would actually go over better with our local crowd with some food,
Yeah.
on draft at our location. So how do we do both well without being big? And I don't want to be big, and I don't want to distribute. Um, and we're going to keep treating this thing like, a brewery rather than a business if we can, as long as we can.
Yeah,
That's my thoughts.
the small brew house kind of reminds me of like what Vinny did at Winter.
Yes.
And he's just in there, making
Awesome.
whatever he wants, and
Yep.
and it goes on draft at their location, and
Yep.
it fills this desire that you have personally, but also for the more curious beer drinker, it scratches an itch too.
Yep.
And I think what you're talking about with another location with food and whatnot, our customer demographic is aging. I say aging, I mean they are getting married, they are buying a house, they are having children, they are making big life changes, right? So money sometimes usually gets quite a bit tighter, and time gets tighter. And so, to expect them to just buy big stouts or barley wines, that's a harder thing to convince them to do, as the pocketbook gets a little tighter. But if you can offer a place to go with your family or with your spouse or partner and enjoy just some beers over the bar and some food, they can still do that, and that might be like an easier sell, or not so much sell, but it's an easier way for them to stay connected with your brand, with your company.
There's whenever Karen and I travel with the boys, we still go find the local brewery. And some of my best experiences at breweries in the last, I guess 3 years, COVID / post-COVID, have been at breweries that were just making, I mean, there's so many breweries making good beer now. And we would go to a brewery that makes good beer, so I'm enjoying my beer, but they were hospitable. Like they had like outdoor, like outdoor areas that's all AstroTurf, and they have like 2x4 Jenga and bags, and the kids can run around in circles. And I mean, so probably some people listen to this, that sounds terrible because they're like, I don't want kids running around me. But like for me and my family, my time is valuable because I'm trying to balance a family life and a business life. And so Karen and I still get the enjoyment of going to a brewery and experiencing them. But the breweries that we find the best for us now in our lifestyle is you're still making good beer. Let's be honest. Got to make good beer. And then it's a place that has a snack for the kids, so the kids can have some enjoyment and things. I enjoy those places more. I can't take my kids to just honestly like a brewery like Side Project where it's only about beer. And so we're looking about doing a food truck, not a food truck, but like, well, it'll be a food truck at Side Project, but it's our kitchen because we don't have room to build a kitchen. So it'll always be at our place. It'll be Side Project owned food. So you can have food at Side Project and do these other things. And so it's all encompassing of an experience than just beer. And it's because like our pizza place across the street from the brewery that we teamed up with Pizza Champ to do, we take our kids there all the time where we can have a slice of pizza, they can eat French fries and we eat pizza and there's TVs up but I still get a great beer, made by Side Project. And so you can do both. And so I think that's where the next phase, at least for us, is. And I find enjoyment at the breweries that are doing that very well around the country when we do travel. And so I'm thinking it's not the brew pub anymore. It's not a brew pub. That got tired a long time ago because it was about a pub and drinking, where these are more almost communal gathering points. Some places have outdoor movie theaters, like in these things that are more. So that's where I envision us going. I don't know if it'll happen because it takes the right place, right neighborhood, right town, right space. These are big places and big investments that can be nerve wracking for a small company where you're, a small brewery where you start thinking about debt and stuff. And I'm just trying to make the right decision for our 34 employees now and give them a job for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever, however we do this thing without screwing it up, and then you got Brad over here who just works by himself and I'm jealous of that too.
I've got a new assistant, actually, John Drennan, who was the head brewer at Sante. He moved back to Santa Cruz, so he's been in here like 10 to 15 hours a week, and I'm really leaning into him just from like a operational standpoint. And I've never had that in the 4 years that I've done this, and we're really jiving good together. And it's great to have somebody else in here, like when we're blending.
Yep.
Just kind of like bounce things off of, and cool. we were blending a new barley wine yesterday, and we both just like didn't say anything for like 20 seconds after tasting a blend, and I was like, that's the one. It was
I love it.
Little assurances like that. But yes, you're right. From a business standpoint, my plate's pretty empty as far as staff goes and all those things and debt and whatnot. But I mean, hopefully I can keep it that way too, but we'll just kind of see where the spending habits go. And if it needs to get more complicated, it always can, right, Cory?
It can. It really can. And as long as we stay in control of it, I feel like we've made the right decisions to get to where we are now. And if we just stay in control and keep doing what we do, then we won't go too far down the wrong path.
And as long as we can still make a triple or blend all the beers. There's certain things that, I mean, boots on the platform. I love doing that. I do a lot less of it. But at some point you kind of gotta hand that over to the guys that honestly do it better than you or I could, because we don't do it enough to be good at it anymore. You know?
My guys, I'm gifted with, like, I think the best brewers in the country, and I say that, like, they're amazing and they're amazing people, and I hope that all breweries will acknowledge that their brewers are the best in the country. And I think that doesn't go far enough to where people think I do everything. Like, you crazy? I don't do everything.
I know.
It's like I haven't. It takes a team to do all this really well, and I will say I taste every beer before it's sold to you. That's for sure. But it's just not physically possible to do everything. And I have like the best crew in the world. And they are why Side Project is a big proportion of why it is what it is today.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can speak from experience, Cory, but anybody especially any brewer or beer industry person that has visited Side Project and stepped behind the tap room, or even just sat at the bar and met your front of the house staff, your brewers, your logistics team, like everybody. You guys have incredible pickers, if you will. I mean, you and Karen. I mean, Karen with the front of the house staff. I mean, those it's always welcoming. They're very professional. They're fun. They're genuine. I think that's a testament to both you and Karen, your families, how you guys were raised, and what you guys hold important and dear. So, on that note, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me, and I look forward to hearing who and what you talk about on the next Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. Thank you, Cory.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Brad.
Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, Malteurop Malting Company's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropemaltingco.com to learn how Malt Europe Malting Company can support your malting needs. Contact Malt Europe Malting Company at customersuccess@malteurope.com or dial 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. First Tea is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Some of the brightest brewers across the country have discovered the First Tea advantage. Hill Farmstead, Sweetwater Brewing Company, and Angry Chair are among the many who have used First Tea's unique and quality teas and botanicals to create top-rate beers. First Tea focuses on being direct, flexible, and fast. You can find out more about First Tea's collaboration with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting firsttea.com/blog. That's FIRSDTEA.com/blog.